Welcome to another edition of Nutmeg Chatter presents the Claw's Corner. This week features artist Marc Stolfi. He is the proud owner of Wrong Way Art Studio, and his work was recently on display at the Five Points Annex in Torrington, Connecticut. Please welcome to the show, artist extraordinaire, Marc Stolfi. Marc, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Rich, for having me. I'm glad to be here.
All right, so recently you had your work on display at the Five Points Annex in Torrington, like I just mentioned in the intro. Tell me how that came about.
Well, a very good friend of mine, Bill Haygood, he works for Five Points Gallery now. He's a patron of the arts and an art collector, and he approached me, and he wanted to have a show because he was interested in my new work, which is a little bit of a departure from my usual work. And so he basically came to me and said, let's have a show, and I said, okay.
So what kind of paintings do you paint? What's your style?
I am generally known for very realistic, traditional oil paintings, watercolors. I was trained as an illustrator, so I tend to be very realistic in my work. And my latest series is actually, it's still representational, but it's looser. And you've seen it.
Yes.
And I am trying to loosen up in more ways than one.
Well, I have to tell you, one of my favorites is the woman with the skull in her hand.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm guessing, or you told me, that the model was your wife.
Correct. I'm sorry.
No,
yes.
just tell me more about when you're painting. Do you always use models, or do you take a picture and just paint from that picture? What's your style of how you paint?
It is. It depends. I used to work a lot from live models. My wife's not crazy about me having live models.
And that's why he has pictures now.
And that's so I use my wife. My wife is beautiful. She's a great model, and she's got a great face. And so sometimes I'll say, honey, I've got an idea in my head, and we'll do like a photo shoot, and I will have her, do whatever I need done for that particular painting. I have this wonderful anatomically real skull that they use in medical school. I bought one online, and so it was cast from a real skull. And I have lots of cool props in my studio that I use.
Yeah, it looked very realistic in the painting.
Yeah,
you did a great job.
Thank you. So I've got a lot of kids. I have a big family and a business, and I don't have a lot of time. And so my family's a lot of my subject matter.
Well, you also painted a mural at the Torrington Library. Tell me about that.
Yes. They approached me to do a mural in the new edition that they had put on the library a couple years ago. There was a great space available, and they gave me a list of the 60 most influential children's books. And so it started with Aesop's Fables and ended with Percy Jackson. Mm-hmm. And every book in between through the years.
I'm sure Dr. Seuss made it.
Dr. Seuss
Winnie
made
the
it.
Pooh.
Winnie the Pooh made it.
All the classics.
The Hobbit.
Oh, The
made
Hobbit,
it.
Yes.
Let's see, what else was in there? Can't think of the guy's name now.
Well, we'll get back to that.
Yes.
But word on the street has it, and I don't like to spread rumors, but word on the street has it that you have hidden Easter eggs regarding the history of Torrington in your mural. Is that true?
Yes, that was my. That was part of the project, was to educate people about Torrington history in a fun way, especially to get children involved. So I hid little illustrations that have to do with Torrington history, and I learned some amazing facts about Torrington history that I did not know. I was born and raised here. The first parlor guitars, the first mass-produced guitars in the country were made in Torrington.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that either. So that's interesting.
Yeah, and they had little keyboards that they made here, clocks, bicycles. There's a bicycle company in Torrington. So, it was really fun. So if you look at the mural, I believe they have a little printout that you can kind of search for all these little things that I hid in between the book illustrations.
In a way, it's kind of like Salvador Dali, where if you look at his painting, you could see little things that you didn't even realize from a distance existed.
Correct.
You like his style?
I do. My appreciation for art has changed over the years. The more I paint, the more I appreciate different artists. Dali was one that I've always liked because he could paint like Michelangelo if he wanted to, and the fact that he was able to bend things and show what he wanted to and still paint it with a craft and a skill, I appreciate that.
So for you, which artist do you most identify with?
I would have to say Wyeth, the original. We discussed this at my show.
Yeah,
and I always forget his first name. They're actually having a retrospective of his work,
and he's definitely one of your favorites. That you most why do you identify with him most?
I grew up, reading Treasure Island, and I loved all of the classic illustrations from, like the golden age of illustrations, probably from the, 1890s to the 1950s, where, children's books were elaborately bound and you would order them through the mail and get these beautiful editions of, Treasure Island or Robinson Crusoe, illustrated by Wyeth, and I loved them. They were realistic, but they were also they had movement. They were the right combination of realism and almost a comic book action, which I loved.
Great combination. So, how old were you when you decided that you wanted to become an artist?
That's a interesting question. I think I was born an artist. I didn't want to be, I didn't want to be a race car driver or a doctor or an astronaut.
All the fun things.
Yeah. No, I instantly, as soon as out of the womb, I decided on a life of poverty.
Well, you bring up a great point because most artists, and I'm going to bring up another name, Jackson Pollock, a little bit later, but most of them never made money, but when they're dead,
yes,
that's when they make all the money. And there's a great Seinfeld episode where George buys a painting because he thinks the artist is dying. Then the artist gets better and he's trying to return it because he knows it's not worth anything.
I joke with people all the time who actually, I do have people who collect my work, and I joke with them all the time. I'm like, if you want to double the price, what it's worth, just push me down the stairs.
I'm sure you sleep with one eye open when your wife is home.
Well, no, she can have it.
So, out of the womb, you said, I want to be an artist. What were you painting as a child?
Airplanes.
Airplanes.
My dad is an Air Force vet, and he has a huge library of history books. He's a history buff. His father was a history buff. My grandfather was in World War II. I was told he read every book in the Torrington Library about World War II. And so I grew up surrounded by books, and I would flip through books and copy the airplanes. I was fascinated by World War II airplanes, so those were the first things I used to draw.
And was that was with pencil? Or was
pencil, yep.
With paintbrush, watercolors?
I didn't start painting until later. Painting would frustrate me, so I was very comfortable drawing, and that's what I stuck with for a long time.
Now, what is the TAG program?
Well, that's an old program, I think. I don't even know if it still exists. It was called Talented and Gifted, and for some reason they threw me in there when I was at the old East School or the new East School. It was actually new back in the day, and I was in the TAG program, and I had some amazing art teachers. I was allowed to expand my creativity through the TAG program, and in Vogel School and high school, I had great art teachers who kind of guided me, but let me go a little bit.
They approached you and said, we'd like to have you part of this program.
Yes.
Well, we're going to be right back when Nutmeg Chatter presents the Claw's Corner with artist Marc Stolfi right after this. Nutmeg Chatter presents The Claw's Corner is back. I am speaking with artist Marc Stolfi. Marc, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
All right, so we talked about how you started art when you were a kid. Did you ever go to art school besides tag? Or like when you went into college, did you continue saying, I want to become an artist, I want to make this a living?
I did. I would not recommend the way I did it. But no, I went to several schools, and I do not have a degree to show for all my time, but I learned an incredible amount at all of those schools. I went to Southern Connecticut, I went to the Hartford Art School, I went to UConn, and I went to Pear College in Hamden, which was fabulous.
What did art teach you? What did those schools teach you?
They opened my eyes to other styles of art. I also had a minor in art history, so I learned to appreciate good art or to appreciate the craft.
Yeah.
It didn't matter if I liked the finished product. If I could see the craftsmanship and the thought that went into someone's work, I could really appreciate it. And it made me look at my own work differently and try to, kind of bump up my own craftsmanship. I appreciated the competition, believe it or not.
No, I think
in art
competition
school
is great because if there's no competition, you become complacent. And you
Exactly.
just like put out, this is good enough. There's nobody else out, so I'm going to they'll buy this. So I think competition is great. It makes you a better artist. And I think that goes with any field, like radio, music. So, but you are the proud owner of Wrong Way Art Studios. I love that name. So why is it called Wrong Way Art Studio?
Well, like as I said before about concerning my education, I've generally done things in ways that convention would say not to do them. So I was known in the 90s for doing trompe-l'oeil paintings, very, very super realistic still lifes. And I was becoming known in the field. I was selling some work. I was represented by a pretty high-end gallery in Guilford. And my life situation changed a little bit, and I just got burned out. I got tired of doing that style of painting. I wanted to do more. I knew I could do more. And so I just decided that I was going to do the work that I needed to get out of inside of me. I wasn't going to just be a factory producing gallery.
Yeah, like mass production.
Yeah. So if I want to do a series of marine paintings, I do a series of marine paintings, which steps on all the toes of all the marine artists. I'm using air quotes. And then if I want to do figurative work, I start doing figurative work because that's where my mind goes.
Right. So for the uninitiated, what is a trompe-l'oeil painting?
Trompe-l'oeil means fool the eye, and it is a very old style of painting. I believe it started in Rembrandt's studio. Some of his students would paint coins, like a guilder, like a golden coin on the wooden floor, and a visitor to the studio would look and think it was a real coin and try to pick it up.
That's funny.
There are some famous paintings where you would see a portrait of a woman in a window, and on the windowsill is a fly. And it's little tricks of the eye. So you at first glance you go, oh, look, there's something there. So it's a way of painting that is very close focus. It's only a couple inches deep. So they would set up these still lives and paint everything so realistic that there was no chance for your eye. There was nothing in the distance, so you'd have to blur something and keep it. It was all sharp focus, very detailed painting.
So for you, when painting, what is your forte?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, oil paint is my main medium, and I think figures. I think portraying figures. I try to do everything a little bit differently. It was actually a drawing, that the one drawing that was in my show. of St. Florian. St. Florian is a patron saint of firefighters and soap makers and brewers.
Sounds like a fun bunch.
So, as far as I know, I have made the only actual historically accurate representation of St. Florian. So my forte would be that I research everything that I do, and I try to be as true as possible to my subject matter.
So when you're approached for a painting,
Mhm.
like you said, St. Florian, how long before you actually start the painting? Like, do you take a year off? I mean, not from work, but take a year off just to research it before you even put the brush to the...
It depends. I will research. I have notebooks in my studio, and if something interests me, I will start taking notes on it and then put it aside. If someone comes to me with a specific subject, I may take a couple weeks. I always work. I always sketch. If it's a big project like the mural project, that took several months. So we were meeting every month, and I was coming with new sketches and new ideas, and then the library would say, well, we had this in mind, and then I would go back and resketch, and so it's generally a collaborative effort, unless someone just says, hey,
Now, where would you paint that, the mural? Like, did they have a place in the library? Because I can imagine it's so huge. You have a big room downstairs where you can just spread it all over the floor.
No, the mural was done on the wall.
Really?
So I had a scaffold that was donated, and I would. They actually gave me a key to the library because of my schedule. So I would go at 4 a.m. and work until 9, and then lock up, and then go to our shop, which opened at 10. And occasionally I would go at night, but I would prefer to work very early in the morning. So that's I pretty much did the entire mural between 4 and 9 in the morning.
Are you allowed to make any mistakes? Say you're almost done. You're on the last character of the top children's books of all time, and then Winnie the Pooh doesn't come out the way you want it. How can it be fixed?
I have been painting long enough to be able to. I've made enough mistakes to know how to fix them all. I'm confident in that, and that just comes with a lot of experience. So I make mistakes all the time, but it just depends on how you handle them, and there are ways to fix things. I always tell. I used to teach art, and I would tell my students, we're not working in concrete, so don't worry. It's paint. You can just paint over it.
Well, that's what amazes me, because when you're saying that, I was thinking of Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
I went to South Dakota. I said, how can they not? What happens if they make a mistake? And I was speaking to somebody, and they said, oh, we don't make mistakes. Nobody's perfect. So obviously, you get George Washington's nose wrong. Like, oh, we have to blast it. So that's what I was thinking of Mount Rushmore when you were talking about fixing the mural, because I guess it might be a little bit easier to hide something. Could put another Easter egg over Winnie the Pooh's, bad paw. But for the most part,
you saw that?
I did see that. I was trying to keep it a secret from my listeners, but that's another Easter egg that you can see.
No, it's you can paint over things. You can, in an extreme situation, you could put white paint over it and start over again. Nothing's, you just have to be confident enough to know that eventually it's going to come out right.
I think that's the beauty of Jackson Pollock. You could drop a can of paint on the floor. Now that's beautiful. That's art. That's beautiful. And people would say, yeah, that's a Pollock. That's exactly how he wanted it.
Well, he was pretty particular about the way he handled his paint, and he was the first guy to do it.
Yeah, well, that's the
what
most
makes
important.
him special.
Exactly. Yeah. I think there's a lot of imitators that came after him,
mm-hmm.
and I want to talk about this because there's a movie about him.
Yep.
We have to take a break first. So Nutmeg Chatter presents the Claw's Corner will return with artist Marc Stolfi right after this. Nutmeg Chatter presents The Claw's Corner is back. I have been speaking with artist Marc Stolfi. Marc, once again, thanks for being on the show.
I appreciate it. Glad to be here.
All right, so before the break, we were talking about Jackson Pollock, and I agree with you. He is the first one to do it, but there is a movie entitled Who the Bleep is Pollock?
Yeah.
It's hilarious. It's this woman. She's down south. She knows nothing about art. She goes to a tag sale, buys this painting for $5 for her friend, and somebody says, I think that's a Pollock. So the whole documentary is her trying to find out if it's a real Pollock. Mm-hmm. And this is what drove me crazy and also entertained me at the same time. There's one word I can say about, I mean, we're talking about art right now, but is pretentious. And I'll tell you what I mean. Say I'm looking at the Pollock, and I'm like, it's just a couple squiggly lines. Excuse me, you just don't understand art, as they put their nose in the air. And that's where I was laughing, because there was a lot of people in that documentary that were doing that. And I thought it was funny because there was one person who was a scientist, and he actually had it down to a science that was like the same paint, same thumbprint, everything. And then there was an artist from the Metropolitan Museum. Oh, no. He just doesn't get the essence of art. That is not a Pollock. It's like, no, but it's science. It's definitely, it's pretty much a Pollock. But then it turned around, too, because the woman who wasn't, acclimated in the art world, she all of a sudden became an expert. Oh, somebody was going to offer her $5 million. No. They just, my penny is worth much more than $5 million. And it's like, 2 weeks ago you bought it at a tag sale, thought it was a piece of junk. Now you're holding out in $5 million. So I thought it was funny. Like I said, the word pretentious came up a lot in that documentary. But so were you a fan of his style originally?
Not necessarily. No, I was not. But again, in studying art history, it's always important to appreciate the first person to do something, because it in his time, what he did, it was very avant-garde, and you've got to have some what's the word? I don't
some bravery. We'll put it. It's a family show, everybody.
Yes.
You have to have some bravery, some courage.
Exactly.
That's what you were looking for.
You've got to have some of those to be the first guy to do something, and to have shows. I mean, even the Impressionists.
Oh yeah.
They were made fun of. They were kicked out of traditional. My air quotes again are back up. Traditional shows. But they kept working, and they kept at it, and they had the intestinal fortitude and confidence to say, no, this is my work, and this is what I'm doing.
Well, I think that's the most important thing in any field is confidence. If you believe in what you're doing, don't try and find the audience. Let the audience find you. Because if you paint what you think the audience wants to buy, you're going to have people like, it's okay. But if you paint from your heart and with passion, there's going to be people that find you and say, you know what, I love Marc Stolfi's work. He's great. You got to check it out. So I think that's probably the most, besides talent, confidence is probably the most important thing that an artist should have.
I agree.
And speaking of confidence, I love this because, as you said, artists don't make money, so you have to supplement your income. Mm-hmm. And you have an interesting outlook on supermarket products, specifically the artwork on canned goods. Please tell my listeners all about what you think about the canned goods in the supermarket.
Okay, so I had a 3-month stint working overnights at a particular grocery establishment, and I, being a visual person, and between midnight and 6 a.m., your mind wanders. So I was constantly critiquing the packaging. Because when I was in art school, I did take some design classes. I took package design. And 80% of the package design I see these days is terrible. And the one saving grace is the pasta aisle.
Pasta.
The Italians still have beautiful labels. The canned tomatoes from from Italy, the pasta from Italy, or even the American companies that are trying to emulate the Italian companies have really good package design. Beautiful, classic, good colors, fantastic. Unfortunately, that wasn't my aisle, so I got to look at a bunch of not so good stuff.
Well, it's funny because I used to work in retail, and I know how important the packaging is because people would buy something. We would have something sitting on the shelf for 6 to 8 months, It would collect dust every night. I would go by and wipe the dust off the shelf. They would change the packaging. I couldn't keep it in stock. I said, it's the same product that was on there last week.
Yeah.
And it's all about the packaging.
Yes, it makes a huge difference.
I think you have a career in marketing, my friend.
Yeah. Probably next. I've had a few careers.
Now, are you a fan of Rembrandt?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So tell me about Night Watch.
So I have I'm working on a project. It's called the Night Watch Project. I have been studying Rembrandt for a couple years, and I have been producing paintings in his style, not copying him, but the way he worked. So I have been buying handmade paints in the same 8 colors that he had available to him, and I have been working in a way where he would use a technique. It's called grisé. He would paint his figures in black and white first and do all the modeling and get everything done in black and white, and then he would glaze the colors on top. And some artists would do it in black and white and then glaze it in green, believe it or not, and then do the colors on top of that. But it gives the figures depth. And so I have this project. I've always loved Rembrandt's Night Watch. It's not the actual title of the painting, but it's commonly known as the Night Watch. It's that huge painting of the militia that were part of his town, and they commissioned him to do this painting of like 30 guys just turning out for militia training. And it's lighted really interestingly, and there's all kinds of stuff going on that seems completely incongruent to the rest of the figures. There's a girl who has this mysterious light on her, this little girl with this beautiful gold dress, and she has a chicken hanging from her belt. And there's dogs running around, and it's been fascinated by the painting all my life, and I am doing a modern version of that painting.
When do you expect that to be done?
Well, hopefully by the end of this year.
All right. Well, definitely going to be looking out for that. Maybe at the 5 Points Annex.
Well, we'll see. There's a lot of guns in it. I don't think it's. It might not be that popular, just because. Again, it's a modern version of those guys, and those guys are all carrying their weapons that they would use back then, and so some of the figures in my painting are carrying weapons that they would carry these days. So it's probably going to be controversial. It's not meant to be. It's just my version, my modern version of his painting, which I've always been a fan of.
We only have 2 minutes left.
Mm-hmm.
I can't believe a half hour's already gone by. There's so much more to talk about. You have to come back on the show. So, but before we go, I want to ask you this question. What was the oddest painting that you were asked to paint? I love this story. Somebody came to you and said, can you paint this?
I guess one of my careers is as a forger.
The names have been changed to protect the innocent.
Yes, and
I'm guilty.
I'm wearing a mask right now. But
that's not his real voice.
An older gentleman asked me to paint a painting for him because he was unable to. He was an amateur artist. He was a very nice gentleman, and he was trying to do this painting for a lady friend of his, and he couldn't do it because he had bursitis or something in his elbow and shoulder. And so I actually painted this woman's dog from a photograph, and I let him put his name to it.
It's almost like that movie Big Eyes. It's based on a true story where the wife was more talented than the husband, and he was getting all the credit because people didn't expect women to paint back then. You're a modern-day Big Eyes.
Well, thank you. Listen, I got paid for the job, so I'll take it.
Yep. So we have 30 seconds left. Where can people find your work?
Well, you can see my work on Instagram, hashtag Marc Stolfi. It's MarcStolfi. My website is Wrong Way Studio. Wrong Way is one word. And you can see my work at our frame shop on 332 Riverside Avenue here in Torrington.
All right. Well, thanks for being on the show, Marc. Had a great time. You have to come back.
Thank you, Rich. I look forward to it.
That wraps up another episode of Nutmeg Chatter presents The Claw's Corner. A huge thank you goes out to the extremely talented artist, Marc Stolfi. I look forward to seeing much more from you in the future. And I would also like to thank you, the listener, for tuning in every week. Enjoy your day, everyone.